Humans have a biological reflex to listen into the void. We spin radio dials through dead static and point satellite dishes at deep space, looking for any mathematical pattern that proves we aren't alone. If an operation needs absolute silence, it goes to the New Mexico desert. The landscape provides thousands of square miles of arid, empty isolation. Somewhere past this restricted boundary sat a concrete military bunker. In 1979, the Department of Defense officially welded the doors shut. The paperwork cited a mundane reason for the closure: a persistent communication failure. Placing a heavily fortified door in the middle of nowhere and ordering people to stay away acts as a magnet for mystery hunters. The extreme secrecy creates the perfect environment to trap anyone actively looking for answers. Ethan Carter was a radio enthusiast. He spent his nights hunting for ghost transmissions, twisting the dials on shortwave receivers to pull undocumented frequencies out of the background noise. Curious. Late one night, the static broke. He caught a sharp mechanical ticking, a clean pulse with no source code. Running the audio through his hardware to isolate the data, the raw pulse finally resolved into 3 distinct words: "Come to us." In nature, if a concealed organism actively broadcasts its exact coordinates into the wild, it is deploying a lure. It is waiting for prey to take the bait. Ethan triangulated the origin point of the broadcast. The coordinates mapped directly onto that sealed military bunker from 1979. Letting curiosity override his survival instincts, he packed his gear and drove into the desert. He arrived to find the heavy steel bunker doors sitting half open. Inside, a concrete tunnel sloped downward, lined with decaying copper wire and corroded junction boxes. At the end of the long corridor, he stopped at a single room. A faded stencil on the metal frame read, "Signal Room." A bunker abandoned for decades should be a tomb of seized gears and rusted locks. Instead, the heavy door yielded at a touch, swinging inward on silent, well-greased hinges as if the facility had been expecting a visitor. The second Ethan's boot crossed the threshold, the room reacted. Racks of dead machinery snapped to life. Indicator lights flared, and the fluorescent bulbs overhead began to pulse. Heavy static pour from the main speaker, followed by that same mechanical tick. Then a voice cut through the room. "You received us." Ethan backed away from the console. Panic setting in, he shouted over the noise, demanding to know who was operating the equipment. The response from the speaker was immediate and entirely monotone. "We are waiting." This is the moment a two-way connection becomes a one-way street, the auditory equivalent of a predator's jaws locking shut. The concrete walls began to emit a low-frequency hum. The barometric pressure dropped so fast the air felt heavy, pressing down on Ethan's chest with the weight of an invisible mass. Then the physics of the room broke. Ethan froze in place, but his shadow on the wall did not. It turned to look at him. The dark silhouette stretched outward, peeling itself away from the concrete surface. 2 distinct physical entities now occupied the space. The detached shadow formed a grin. It bypassed the radio equipment completely, speaking directly into the room. "We found you." The silhouette stepped forward and dissolved straight into Ethan's paralyzed body. A few seconds later, his irises dilated until his eyes were completely black. In 1979, they didn't seal this room because the equipment failed. They sealed it because they realized the signal wasn't a message, it was a delivery system. It doesn't travel through space, it travels through the airwaves, waiting for a host to turn up the volume. The human consciousness of Ethan Carter ceased to exist. Only his physical shell remained, entirely puppeteered by the anomaly. The entity adjusted its new hands, turned calmly toward the main broadcast console, and initiated the next transmission. It spoke into the microphone. Next signal ready. The predator had finished consuming its prey. With a new operator at the controls, the mechanism was reset, primed to cast a wider net. 24 hours later, a previously undocumented frequency began appearing across global internet servers. The snare had evolved. A digital audio file carried Ethan Carter's stolen voice, pleading, "Can you hear us?" Today, thousands of people scrolling through digital audio boards stumble across that exact file. They trace the metadata, follow the coordinates, and vanish. If you scan the frequencies late at night and an unknown voice calls out to you, do not answer. Out in the dark, some broadcasts are simply predators, waiting for you to leave the door unlocked.